never quite sure how much point there is in recording videos like this as they get very, very low viewership, but I'm interested in chatting about them nonetheless. In my quest to sing the praises of physical media, I'm going to look at this movie, Vanishing Waves, which I don't believe you can stream anywhere. I have heard that there's a library app that you might be able to have access to if you are able to do that, and that it may be available through that library app, but I'm not sure beyond that. Anyhow, this is Vanishing Waves from 2012, if I remember right. It is a Lithuanian science fiction film. I believe it is considered to be the first feature-length science fiction film out of Lithuania, directed by, I'll never say the name right, apologies, but it's Christina Boitzy, maybe, or I don't want to butcher it further than I already have. Anyhow, I find this movie to be really fascinating. It is a slow burn. It does cover territory that you may have seen before, but I think it does it in a really interesting way. When I say that, I mention specifically a movie like The Cell, for example. It kind of looks into a similar technological concept, but does so in a vastly different way than The Cell. Now, The Cell is a movie that I enjoy the heck out of, but it's basically a really beautiful and horrific sometimes, really beautiful serial killer movie. That is very much not what this is. But the technology is similar. It's about connecting people via technology, connecting their brains. I think of it in a sense a little more like Primer, which now this has a different feel and it feels a little more bigger budget. Primer is a sort of a special movie. I mean, this is a movie that is clearly made on very little money, but they did a lot with what they had. This movie felt more like a produced movie with money behind it. Not necessarily a high budget. It's not Inception, also a movie that covers similar ground. But it covers, when I say that it reminds me of Primer, it's that it feels like a very grounded look at a science fiction technology, where Primer feels like a movie that is a realistic take on if people discovered and how they would discover and what they might do with time travel. Feels very much like a kind of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, tech bro, proto tech bro, stumbling across technology while trying to find whatever they can to make money, and then what they do once they accidentally discover time travel. This feels like a grounded view of a technology to link brains. And I saw a YouTube reviewer mention that it's like the dawn of a new technology. So this is really like people trying to use a technology in hopes that in the future it can be something, but this is their first foray into it. I'm also reminded of films like Solaris. When I talk about like a slow burn, also it has, in the 1970s, I feel like American cinema went through this phase where they made a lot of movies where, to be realistic, they had people, it was almost like the opposite of the idealism of the 1950s, where instead of everybody being gentle and perky and forthright and everything, they went to the other extreme. In 1970s American film, it felt mainstream film, drama. And it's sometimes not mainstream films. I think of like Cassavetes is a big proponent of this, but also you look at The Exorcist and you look at the relationship between Reagan and her mother. Excuse me, where everybody is so arch and everybody is so angry and everybody is like an alien. Nobody can relate to anybody. Everybody is an island of seething anxiety, blah, blah, blah. that's sort of how a lot of 70s drama feels to me, where everybody is so over the top, just nobody can get along. And I also felt that that was the case in a lot of mid late 80s and early 90s European drama. And this taps into a little bit of that. The main character in this, Lucas, feels like a 1970s American character or a 1980s, early 90s European, like a French or German film main character, where he is emotionally distant, aloof, kind of a jerk, treats his wife or girlfriend, I can't remember which, very poorly. It just, it's that it has that weird feel where everybody's sort of alienated. But that's also kind of interesting because it does work into the subject of connecting minds and the fact that Lucas does reach out to somebody and becomes compelled to reach out to somebody in an odd circumstance. There is also morality issues that are not necessarily addressed in the film, maybe as much as I would have liked to have seen. The morality issue of using a comatose patient who has no ability to consent to being used for medical experiment. I mean, that's pretty dark. But what you end up having is just some really interesting exploration of trying to connect brains, trying to at first. I think it feels like it's connect at all, and then connect emotionally, and then connect through ideas, and eventually communicate. I find a lot of that really sort of fascinating. I was also reminded of other tech and brain and confusing movies like Videodrome and Dreamscape. Dreamscape, I feel like, is the other end of the spectrum. This is the taking this kind of technology and going to the full 80s Hollywood action adventure version of it, which I love. But I also bring it up because, I'm a tabletop RPG guy. I think that the technology would have really interesting ramifications in a game like Cyberpunk Red. I think about the movie Strange Days, the Catherine Bigelow film, which also kind of covers not the same tech, but a similar line. You could imagine that the squid units could have evolved out of something like the tech from Vanishing Waves. But in Cyberpunk Red, what that kind of thing would do, of course, you could work it into a more contemporary 70s, 80s, 90s, modern, whatever version of Call of Cthulhu. Perhaps this is a way to discover the Dreamlands. And of course, anytime you come up with weird tech and contemporary strangeness, there's always something like Over the Edge that it might serve as inspiration for. But I just thought I would bring up Vanishing Waves. I think it's an interesting movie that if you can track down a copy of, I would recommend checking it out. The director went on to do a movie a couple of years back. It took 10 years for her to do a second, or it's actually a third feature film, but it took 10 years between Vanishing Waves and Vesper, which has Eddie Marsan, if I'm saying his name right, in it. And I thought was a very cool science fiction movie. Really good use of special effects and it looked really good for what I don't believe was a very big budget. But I hope it doesn't take her another 10 years to make another movie for sure. This also comes with it comes with a booklet about the movie, which I have not read yet. Just a few pages. I guess I shouldn't. Yeah, it's edited enough. But it also comes with a second disc, has some bonus features. It also has her first directorial feature film, which is The Collectress. I can't say that I loved it. It taps into, I think, in a similar way that retro 70s in America, 80s, early 90s in Europe, that sort of retro vibe of high anxiety main characters who are morally dubious at best. And it actually has the actor who plays Lucas in this movie. He's in it as a real kind of skeevy film editor. But I thought, it's extremely well acted. It was, I believe, her master's degree project. It's extremely well acted. It's well produced for what I assume is a pretty low budget film. But I can't say that I liked the movie, but I think it was well made. It's just not a movie that I particularly enjoyed watching. Um, but anyhow, I would recommend Vanishing Waves. What are some interesting science fiction movies, especially more off the beaten path kind of science fiction films that you have enjoyed? Any grounded movies that deal with strange technology? I always find that really kind of neat. There's a Robin Williams movie, the name of which is escaping me. I think I have it somewhere on DVD actually, where it's a very retro future where he's sifting through people's memories and finding some really horrendous stuff. But I thought that was uh, certainly a worthy film to watch, although I don't remember it being like. I don't think I've ever watched it a second time, so that's how compelling I found it as far as that goes. Although, if I do still own a copy of it, I think I will watch it again. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm sure at this point probably nobody's watching, especially considering very few people ever watch these videos. But you know, if you have any thoughts, let me know in the comments below. Until next time, take care.